The twin suns of the Zyranth Dominion's capital burned low across the horizon, casting long shadows over the crystalline towers that pierced the sky like jagged teeth. The air shimmered with a subtle hum, the energy of advanced technology woven seamlessly into every surface, every structure. In the heart of this magnificent city stood the palace of the Empress, an architectural marvel that mirrored both elegance and absolute authority. For centuries, she had ruled the Dominion with precision, her mind sharp and her power unmatched, feared across dozens of star systems. Today, however, there was a tension in the air that no technology could mask, an energy that even the Empress herself could feel crawling along her senses like a faint, disquieting vibration. She stood in her observation chamber, a high, circular hall of transparent alloys that allowed her to see the entire city sprawling beneath her. Her robes, woven from iridescent fibers that seemed alive, flowed around her like liquid color. The Empress's eyes, deep pools of violet, scanned the horizon, yet they did not rest on the familiar beauty of her dominion. Instead, they were fixed on a distant speck in the sky, the approaching human delegation. Humans. She had studied them extensively, reading every scrap of information the Dominion's intelligence could collect. A fragile species, accustomed to struggle, barely scratching survival on a backwater planet. They had no psychic abilities, no sophisticated technology that could rival the Dominion, and yet, she had learned to respect intelligence, and there was something about this delegation that set her nerves on edge. Her advisors moved carefully behind her, whispering in their native tongue. They spoke of protocol, of the ceremony, of how the humans should be made to feel welcome, but not too comfortable. The Empress, however, was distracted, her thoughts returning again and again to the humans themselves. What could a species so seemingly small and weak teach a dominion that had conquered hundreds of worlds? The landing platform shimmered beneath the first human vessel as it descended. It was simple, utilitarian in design, unlike the intricate ships of the Dominion fleet that sparkled with energy conduits and psychic amplifiers. The humans stepped out, their movements deliberate but not tentative. Their clothing was rudimentary, their appearance unremarkable, but one of them, a man tall and upright, drew her eyes immediately. He moved with a confidence that was unusual, even alien, in a species the Dominion considered primitive. His gaze swept over the platform, taking in every detail with a calm precision that suggested he was already analyzing, already planning. His expression was calm, but it carried a sense of focus, a quiet intensity that seemed to push outward, touching the edges of the Empress's perception. She felt a ripple across her mind, subtle at first, like the brushing of a feather. The ripple became a pulse, then a vibration, and she realized with a start that it originated from the human. He was not projecting in any conscious way, and yet his presence pressed against her senses with an unspoken assertion. It was bold, unyielding, and entirely unexpected. The advisors around her exchanged worried glances. Whispers began to fill the chamber, warnings about underestimating a species with no known power. The Empress, however, did not respond immediately. She observed the human silently, feeling something she had not experienced in centuries: uncertainty. Her own mind, trained to anticipate and control, recoiled slightly from the simplicity and clarity of this human's presence. The ceremony began in the central hall, a massive chamber where crystal pillars refracted the light of the twin suns into brilliant patterns that danced along the walls. The air hummed with anticipation as delegates from dozens of species waited, their forms strange and beautiful, each expecting the humans to be timid, unremarkable guests. The human, Commander Alex Wren, stepped forward with his team, unarmed and composed. The Empress descended to the main floor, her steps silent but commanding. She radiated authority, her presence alone capable of bending the attention of every being in the room. And yet, as she observed Alex, her violet eyes widened imperceptibly. For the first time, she felt a flicker of vulnerability, a sensation that she had long forgotten. Alex approached with careful respect, but his gaze never wavered. He did not bow in the elaborate Zyranth manner, yet there was no disrespect in his posture, only assurance. He extended his hand slightly, a human gesture of greeting. The Empress, accustomed to psychic readings and ritual obedience, found herself hesitating. Her hand, adorned with rings that amplified her mental power, hovered in the air, uncertain. The room seemed to pause, as if the very atmosphere recognized the tension between the two. The Empress's advisors tensed, some ready to intervene, yet Alex made no aggressive moves. Instead, he spoke in the common language the Dominion had painstakingly translated, his voice steady, resonant, and clear. "Empress of the Zyranth Dominion," he began, "I come on behalf of humanity. We seek understanding, not conflict. We wish to learn from you as you may learn from us." Humans, despite their fragility, carried an inner force born of struggle, survival, and adaptability. It was a force that could not be measured by technology or psychic ability alone. Whispers erupted in the hall, delegates murmuring in shock at the humans' boldness. Some of the Zyranth courtiers exchanged glances of disbelief. One could almost hear the question forming silently. How could a human, so seemingly powerless, command the attention of the Empress herself? The Empress's lips curved slightly, not in amusement, but in intrigue. She inclined her head, signaling that the human's words were acknowledged. Yet her mind raced, spinning through centuries of knowledge, calculating, analyzing, searching for weakness. She could not allow herself to be surprised, not in front of the court, not ever. Alex continued, presenting his delegation with quiet confidence. He spoke of Earth, of human innovation, of the challenges they had overcome as a species. He did not boast, but his words carried the undeniable weight of experience. Every sentence was a carefully crafted signal, a subtle assertion that humanity was not to be dismissed. The Empress's eyes narrowed. She summoned her advisors closer, their psychic link allowing her to speak without words. "Observe him closely," she instructed. "There is something unusual here. The humans are fragile, yes, but there is a depth in him that I do not yet understand. Watch, learn. Report." The first test was simple in appearance, but designed to be impossible in practice. Alex was led to a simulation chamber where holographic constructs of complex machinery and alien puzzles awaited him. The puzzles required not only logic but intuition, psychic calibration, and knowledge of the Dominion's intricate systems, tools that humans had never mastered. Alex paused for a moment, surveying the complex constructs. He did not panic, did not falter. Instead, he studied the patterns, observing carefully before acting. His movements were deliberate, precise, yet flexible, as if he was weaving through the challenge rather than confronting it head-on. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of energy and the occasional click of machinery. Slowly, deliberately, Alex began to solve the puzzles. The constructs bent to his understanding, not because of power, but because of creativity, insight, and adaptability. The advisors watched, their disbelief growing with every solution. From her vantage point, the Empress felt a subtle shift in the room's energy. A human, she realized with a pang of astonishment, could navigate these trials not with brute strength or psychic mastery, but with something far more dangerous, unpredictable intelligence. The final puzzle required Alex to manipulate a device that could either stabilize the simulation or collapse it entirely. He paused, eyes reflecting both caution and clarity. With careful precision, he adjusted the controls, not in the way the Dominion had anticipated, but in a way that resolved the puzzle entirely. The chamber's energy pulsed, signaling success. The advisors whispered frantically, unable to hide their astonishment. The Empress herself felt a strange heat rise to her face, a color she rarely allowed herself to show. Her violet eyes widened, and for the first time in her long reign, her composed exterior faltered. She felt a fleeting alien sensation, fear tinged with respect. Alex stepped out of the simulation chamber, calm, composed, and entirely unshaken. He met the Empress's gaze without flinching, and in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. This was no ordinary human. This was someone who could challenge centuries of assumptions, who could see patterns beyond the reach of even the most advanced minds in the Dominion. The court murmured, the delegates shifting uneasily. The Empress, for the first time, realized that humans were not to be dismissed as primitive. There was a spark in them, something that even her centuries of knowledge could not fully predict or contain. And in that moment, the Empress, the unchallenged ruler of a mighty empire, felt the first tremor of uncertainty. The next morning, the halls of the Zyranth Palace were alive with a quiet tension. The Empress moved through her chambers with deliberate calm, but inside, her thoughts churned like a storm. The human, Alex Wren, had done the impossible. Not only had he completed the challenges, but he had done so in a way that none of her advisors had predicted. Every test he faced had been designed to expose weakness, yet he had turned them into demonstrations of unexpected strength. The Empress's violet eyes glinted with a mixture of curiosity and unease. For centuries, she had understood the minds of other species, their patterns, their fears, their logic. Yet Alex seemed to defy all her calculations. He was unpredictable yet precise, gentle yet commanding, fragile in appearance yet unyielding in spirit. Her advisors approached, speaking in hushed tones. "Your Majesty," one said, his voice betraying a hint of disbelief, "the human is unlike any other species we have encountered. We cannot predict his responses. He adapts too quickly, thinks differently from any mind in the Dominion. Every action, every choice, every response must be recorded. We will understand him, or at least attempt to. No human should escape the scrutiny of the Dominion." He admired the crystalline architecture, the flowing energy channels, and even the gardens where plants pulsed with a faint psychic resonance. But he did not simply look. He studied, analyzed, and made mental connections that even the Xyranth designers had not anticipated. At one point, he paused before a large holographic map of the Dominion's controlled sectors. Stars, planets, and orbital stations glowed in intricate patterns. He traced a finger over a border of a recently annexed system, noting subtle weaknesses in supply routes and energy distribution. A small smile touched his lips. It was not malice nor aggression, it was recognition. He saw the structure of an empire and noticed the threads that held it together, threads that, if pulled carefully, could reveal the strength and the vulnerabilities of even the greatest power. The Empress watched from above, hidden by her psychic cloaking. The ripple in her mind grew stronger. She had seen strategists before, but none like this. Alex did not rely on overwhelming force or psychic power. He relied on intuition, observation, and reasoning. Each move he made seemed simple on the surface, but its effects were layered, interconnected, and deliberate. The next challenge was subtle. The Empress had designed it as a social test, intending to observe the humans' interactions with the Xyranth elite. The court was a labyrinth of alliances, hidden agendas, and unspoken rivalries. Any misstep could humiliate a delegate or reveal them as inferior. Alex entered the Grand Council chamber, where dozens of Xyranth nobles waited, their many limbs and iridescent eyes reflecting the hall's shifting light. The nobles were prepared for timidity, expecting hesitation and awe. Instead, Alex greeted them with a calm smile and spoke with clarity, demonstrating respect without fear, intelligence without arrogance. He asked questions about their history, their customs, and their philosophies, listening more than speaking. But every question subtly revealed the gaps in their assumptions. He exposed inconsistencies with tact, never challenging authority directly, yet leaving every noble questioning their own reasoning. The Empress leaned over the balcony, her hand resting on the smooth railing. Her face was pale, an unusual shade for her species, and she could feel her advisors' eyes on her. They were aware of the shift in the room, the sense that this human was doing something subtle but extraordinary. Alex was not breaking protocol, not challenging law or power, but he was bending the court with insight and courage, a force no amount of psychic or political might could control. After the council session, Alex was guided to the palace gardens, where alien flora and fauna thrived in controlled ecosystems. He walked among them, observing carefully. He noticed patterns in the plants, growth, the flow of energy through the water channels, and even the subtle behavior of the small creatures that inhabited the gardens. He made quiet notes in a small data pad, his mind connecting threads invisible to even the most trained Xyranth scientists. The Empress, now following him through her psychic link, felt a strange mixture of admiration and frustration. How could a species so young, so physically fragile, exhibit a form of intelligence that rivaled centuries of refinement? It was unsettling. She realized that Alex's strength was not in competing with Xyranth power. It was in transcending the framework of expectation entirely. That evening, the Empress convened a private council with her most trusted advisors. She moved through the chamber with a sense of urgency, her usual composure replaced by a rare tension. "This human," she began, her voice measured but intense, "is unlike any delegate we have encountered. He challenges assumptions without aggression. He adapts in ways that our simulations cannot predict. We must learn more and we must test him further. Humans are fragile and their influence is limited. We might simply guide them, ensuring they do not disrupt our order. And we must prepare for the possibility that he is more dangerous than any army, more clever than any diplomat, and more resilient than we can imagine." Alex's human mind absorbed information quickly, making connections across topics, comparing the Dominion's methods to those of Earth, finding parallels in history, technology, and governance. He recognized patterns in strategy, ethics, and diplomacy that were strikingly similar across species. As he worked, he noticed a minor anomaly in the archive's security system. The data channels had subtle inefficiencies, likely overlooked because the Zyranth trusted their psychic network to monitor all intrusions. Alex made a note. He had no intent to exploit it, but he understood the significance. Even the most advanced system had weaknesses. Even the greatest empires could be observed, analyzed, and understood. The Empress's attention never wavered. She followed every step through psychic projection, noting the human's calm, precise movements. She felt an unfamiliar pang of anxiety. She had prepared for diplomacy, for politeness, for subtle games of influence, but not for a human who acted without fear, who understood without arrogance, and who absorbed knowledge without limitation. Her thoughts returned to the trials of the day. Alex had not only completed them, he had improved them in ways the designers had not predicted. The puzzles he faced in the simulation chamber, the subtle manipulations of the council session, and his observations in the gardens and library, all demonstrated a type of intelligence the Dominion had rarely seen. The Empress realized that this was not a flaw in her planning, but a lesson she could not ignore. Late in the evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, the Empress entered her private chambers, her mind still racing. She removed her ceremonial headpiece, allowing her hair to fall freely, a rare act that signaled her private contemplation. She paced the room, her thoughts circling back to the human repeatedly. "He is not what we expected," she whispered to herself, her voice almost lost in the hum of the palace. "He is not fragile, not weak, not ordinary." She realized, with both fascination and unease, that this human's presence had already begun to change the way she viewed the Dominion, herself, and the galaxy. Meanwhile, Alex paused in a quiet corridor, looking out over the city below. He was aware of the scrutiny, of the invisible eyes upon him, yet he felt no fear. He understood that power could take many forms. The Zyranth relied on control, on expectation, and on predictability. Humanity relied on flexibility, intuition, and courage. Both were forms of strength, but only one was being fully appreciated in that moment. As the night deepened, the Empress returned to her observation chamber. She sat silently, gazing at the stars beyond the palace walls, the galaxy sprawling endlessly before her. Thoughts of conquest, control, and dominance had filled her mind for centuries. Yet now those thoughts were tempered with a new recognition, that humans were different, unpredictable, and perhaps unstoppable in ways the Dominion had never imagined. The tension of the day lingered like a quiet storm. Every advisor, every noble, and every servant within the palace sensed it, the presence of something remarkable, something that challenged centuries of certainty. The human, unaware of the full extent of the shift he had caused, rested quietly, preparing for the next day. And in the silent chamber above, the Empress closed her eyes for a brief moment, her pale hands resting on the railing. For the first time in centuries, she felt the stirrings of doubt, awe, and respect, all intertwined. She had faced countless threats, but none had made her question so profoundly. One human, fragile yet unyielding, had done what no army, no empire, and no psychic power could. He had unsettled the Empress of the Zyranth Dominion. The galaxy, she realized with a mixture of fear and fascination, was about to witness a story that had never been told before. The morning light reflected off the crystalline spires of the palace, scattering rainbows across the vast hallways. The Zyranth Empire was alive with quiet tension, the courtiers whispering behind polished shields of decorum. For centuries, the Empress had maintained absolute control over her empire. Every noble, every soldier, and every servant knew the rules, and no one had ever stepped beyond their expected role. Yet now, a human, a single representative from a tiny planet called Earth, had unsettled centuries of order with nothing more than presence, intelligence, and subtle courage. The Empress moved swiftly to the council chambers, her robes flowing behind her like liquid light. Her violet eyes, usually sharp and steady, betrayed a hint of concern. Alex Wren, the human, had been observed the previous day, and his behavior had been unlike anything she had anticipated. He had passed every trial not by brute force, not through psychic skill, but through adaptability, creativity, and intuition. He had outmaneuvered protocols, turned the rigid court politics into subtle games he could navigate, and in doing so had revealed weaknesses in the court that the Empress had long assumed were impossible to exploit. "Your Majesty," one of her advisors began, his translucent limbs quivering slightly in anxiety, "the human's actions yesterday, they are unprecedented. He has demonstrated an ability to perceive connections that our species rarely sees. He has impressed, if not unsettled, the Council. She had anticipated challenges from alien diplomats and even rival systems, but never from a species considered weak, small, and inconsequential. Alex's mind was precise, yet unpredictable, and that combination had unsettled her deeply. She walked to a private alcove and summoned her personal archives, seeking every report, every analysis on humanity. She learned of Earth's history, a planet marked by survival against impossible odds. Humans had thrived despite wars, famines, and environmental disasters. They had no psychic abilities, no instantaneous communication, and technology that was primitive by Zyranth standards. Yet they had endurance, ingenuity, and a remarkable capacity to cooperate across differences. This knowledge, though gathered from a distance, explained much of what she had witnessed in Alex. Still, it did not ease her unease. The human's mind moved beyond expectation. He was not merely intelligent, he was adaptively brilliant. Meanwhile, Alex continued to explore the palace under careful guidance. He observed the flow of activity, noting the subtle hierarchies among the courtiers. He noticed the unspoken tension between two noble factions, each trying to outmaneuver the other for favor. Though the Empress appeared omniscient, he could see cracks in the social fabric, weaknesses in pride and ambition that even centuries of rule could not fully control. It was in the library that Alex discovered something even more intriguing. Among the archives, he found references to the Zyranth Psychic Network, a system that allowed the Empress to monitor the thoughts of her closest advisors. The network was sophisticated, almost flawless, but it was not perfect. Subtle gaps existed, tiny blind spots that even the Empress could not fully observe. Alex made mental notes, not as preparation for attack, but as observation, understanding that knowledge alone could shift the balance of power if applied wisely. The Empress, watching him through her psychic projections, felt a creeping tension in her chest. She had expected humans to be cautious, deferential, and limited in their reasoning. Alex was none of these. He was calm, confident, and deliberate, yet his choices were almost impossible to predict. His ability to navigate the palace, read the court, and engage with her advisors without arousing hostility revealed a form of intelligence that transcended conventional expectation. Later that day, the Empress decided to observe a private gathering of nobles without announcing her presence. Alex had been invited to attend as a guest, a gesture of diplomacy, and the gathering was meant to assess his social adaptability. The nobles spoke in their melodic, complex language, each word layered with subtle threats, promises, or hidden insults. Alex listened carefully, interpreting not only the meaning of their words but the intent behind them. At one point, a noble attempted to humiliate him by presenting a scenario in which a high-ranking human diplomat might be forced to betray their own species. Alex responded, not with fear, but with a calm and reasoned answer. He proposed a solution that demonstrated both integrity and pragmatism, leaving the nobles speechless. Murmurs passed through the assembly as they realized this human was not easily manipulated, nor did he conform to their expectations of weakness. The Empress, still hidden, felt her pulse quicken. She had ruled this empire for centuries, faced rebellions, and mastered the minds of countless species. Yet she found herself watching, learning, and even questioning as Alex navigated a situation that should have revealed his inferiority. Instead, he demonstrated courage, insight, and foresight. Her face, usually composed and proud, had paled slightly, a reaction no one in her court had ever witnessed. Later, back in her private chambers, she convened a secret meeting with her most trusted advisors. "The human is no ordinary delegate," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We must study him further. He observes more than he reveals, analyzes more than he admits. He is dangerous, not because of aggression, but because of intellect and adaptability. We cannot underestimate him. We cannot control him through threats or influence alone. Observation is necessary, but preparation is critical. We must anticipate not only what he can do, but what he might imagine." He noticed the subtle political rivalries in the court, recognizing that the Empress's advisors were not a single unified force, but a network of competing interests. Some sought favor, others influence, and a few coveted the Empress's position entirely. Alex understood that the internal dynamics of the court were as important as the formal structures of the empire. He made mental notes, observing conversations, gestures, and subtle shifts in attention. Each noble's posture, eye movement, and tone provided information, revealing hidden alliances and rivalries. By the time the day ended, Alex had a map of influence within the palace, not drawn in physical lines, but in relationships, motivations, and subtle power plays. The Empress, observing him, felt a mixture of admiration and unease. She had encountered skilled diplomats, strategists, and warriors, yet none had demonstrated the combination of adaptability, intelligence, and courage that this single human possessed. It was unsettling to realize that a species she had considered weak could, through intellect and insight, match and even surpass centuries of experience. As night fell, the Empress summoned Alex for a private audience. She wanted to confront him directly, to test him not with puzzles or protocol, but with conversation, reasoning, and insight. Alex entered the chamber, his posture relaxed yet alert. The room was dimly lit, the crystalline walls refracting starlight from the twin suns beyond. The Empress regarded him silently for a moment, noting his calm demeanor. "Human," she said, her voice smooth and commanding, "your presence here is unusual. You have completed our trials, navigated our court, and observed our systems with a skill that is unsettling. Understanding is dangerous when it is coupled with insight. You observe not only what is shown to you, but what is hidden. You see patterns and connections that even my most trusted advisors cannot discern. On Earth, humans have learned to survive by noticing what others overlook. We adapt, we connect the dots, we find solutions in ways others may not expect." Her mind raced, recalling the lessons of the past, the histories of conquered worlds, the failures of empires that had underestimated the unexpected. And she realized with both fascination and unease that Alex embodied something greater than mere survival. He represented the full potential of humanity itself, a species underestimated yet quietly formidable. "Then you are clever," she said finally, her voice calm but edged with curiosity. "Clever and dangerous in ways I am only beginning to comprehend." She had faced countless threats, but none had forced her to reconsider so profoundly. Alex had not challenged her with aggression or force. He had challenged her with intelligence, insight, and adaptability, the traits that define the human spirit. That night, the Empress remained in her observation chamber, staring at the galaxy sprawling endlessly before her. The stars seemed brighter yet distant, and in their glow she sensed the subtle currents of change. The human had arrived not as a conqueror, but as a mirror, reflecting qualities the Empress had long overlooked: courage, adaptability, and resilience. And for the first time, she felt the weight of uncertainty. Humanity, fragile in body but unyielding in mind, had begun to challenge her assumptions. The ripple Alex had caused the moment he entered the palace had grown, spreading through the court, through the empire, and into the mind of the Empress herself. The galaxy, vast and full of wonders, had never seen such a combination. A single human, small yet unshakable, standing before the Empress of the Zyranth Dominion, altering the course of perception, influence, and expectation. For the first time, the Empress knew that the coming days would reveal whether humanity was a fleeting curiosity, or a force that even the mightiest empire could not ignore. The day began with a subtle tension in the palace that no one could ignore. Courtiers moved with extra care, whispers echoing softly along the polished corridors. Every eye seemed to follow the human, Alex Wren, as though even the walls themselves had grown aware of his presence. The Empress, seated in her observation chamber high above the palace floor, felt a knot of unease she could not easily dismiss. For centuries, she had been the mind no one could outmaneuver, the ruler no one could surprise, yet Alex continued to confound her expectations with each passing hour. Today, she decided, she would confront him directly, not with protocols, simulations, or indirect observation, but with a test of her own power, the kind that had secured her rule over countless worlds. She summoned Alex to the Hall of Reflection, a chamber known to amplify psychic presence and project visions directly into the mind of anyone standing within its walls. The room was empty except for her, a place of challenge and revelation where rulers tested allies and adversaries alike. Alex entered, unarmed and composed. His posture was relaxed, yet alert, as if he understood the weight of the chamber without intimidation. The walls glimmered with faint light, refracting the energy that the Empress wielded, projecting subtle visions of grandeur, war, and dominion across the floor and ceiling. Many who entered this hall left shaken, overwhelmed by the psychic pressure that the Empress could impose. She regarded him silently for a moment, her violet eyes reflecting the refracted light. "Human," she said, her voice smooth, yet carrying a command that could silence the bravest soldier. "You have surprised me at every turn. You navigate our trials, our politics, and our customs with a skill I cannot predict, yet this chamber will reveal what lies beneath your mind. It will show your intentions, your fears, and your limits. I am here to learn and to demonstrate what humanity can offer through insight, courage, and understanding." Then subtly she attempted to probe his mind, seeking weaknesses, fears, and desires that might betray him. Alex closed his eyes briefly, grounding himself in his own sense of identity. Humans, he knew, survived by resilience, by finding inner anchors when external forces became overwhelming. He did not resist her power with force, but with awareness. He focused on his own purpose, to observe, to learn, and to act with clarity. As the visions washed over him, he analyzed them carefully, noting patterns, inconsistencies, and the intentions behind them. The Empress watched closely, expecting to see a mind break under the psychic scrutiny. She expected hesitation, confusion, or fear, but Alex remained calm, adaptive, and precise. He did not fight her directly, but he did not yield. He used his understanding of psychology, strategy, and human perception to navigate the assault of visions. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he began to reflect some of the projections back, not as defiance, but as clarity. The chamber's energy shifted subtly. The Empress felt a ripple in her control, a disquiet that was both thrilling and unsettling. The human's mind, she realized, was not fragile. It was flexible, able to absorb, process, and redirect pressure in ways she had never encountered. Her face, pale at the edges, reflected an emotion she rarely allowed herself to feel, respect tinged with uncertainty. When the visions faded, Alex opened his eyes. They were clear, steady, and unshaken. "Your power is impressive, Empress," he said, his voice calm, yet carrying a quiet strength. "But even power cannot dictate understanding. Insight, observation, and adaptability matter as much as raw strength. I have learned much, and I hope you see that I respect the mind behind it." Her advisors had underestimated humans, but she could no longer. The ripple of fear and awe grew stronger, and her face paled further. Later, Alex was guided to the council chamber once more, though this time the room was charged with tension not from ceremony, but from politics. The Empress's court was divided. Subtle factions had formed, some seeking favor, others hoping to exploit the human's presence for personal gain. Alex quickly understood the web of intrigue surrounding him. He observed carefully, noting the alliances, rivalries, and ambitions that pulsed just beneath the surface. He saw one faction attempting to frame another with a subtle accusation, using half-truths to sway the Empress's favor. Alex, without confrontation, highlighted an alternative perspective that exposed the logic flaw in their plan. The court murmured, the nobles caught between suspicion and realization. Alex's approach was subtle, respectful, and clever. He did not humiliate anyone, yet he shifted the balance of perception with human ingenuity and insight. The Empress, observing the session through psychic monitoring, felt her mind react in ways she had not anticipated. Alex's subtle manipulation of court politics, his ability to navigate social systems with logic and empathy, revealed a form of strength she had never encountered. For centuries, she had relied on control and psychic dominance to maintain authority. Here, a single human had shifted the balance not through power, but through perception. Her pale face reflected both surprise and admiration. Later in the private gardens, Alex noticed a small group of nobles plotting to undermine the Empress. Their intentions were subtle, hidden criticisms, carefully placed misinformation, and attempts to sway her decisions. Alex did not act aggressively. Instead, he observed, deduced, and anticipated the consequences of their schemes. By understanding the patterns of ambition and rivalry, he positioned himself as a neutral force, subtly allowing the faction to reveal its intentions to the Empress without confrontation. The Empress, still monitoring, watched in astonishment. Alex's human approach, his ability to see through deception without triggering conflict, showcased a form of intelligence that no psychic or military training could replicate. For the first time, she realized that the human's mind was not only resilient, but strategically brilliant in ways her empire had never experienced. That evening, Alex was summoned to the Empress's private chamber again. The room was calm, its walls glowing faintly with energy. She seated herself across from him, her gaze fixed and unwavering. "Human," she said, her tone measured, You have navigated both my trials and my court. You have endured psychic influence, observed our systems, and understood our politics with a clarity that is unsettling. You have not broken the rules, yet you have shifted the balance of perception. Why? We do not rely on dominance alone. She had faced countless threats, yet this single human had forced her to reconsider centuries of assumptions. You are clever, she said finally, her voice calm but tinged with respect. Clever and dangerous in ways I am only beginning to comprehend. You challenge the mind without confrontation, the court without aggression, and me without disrespect. How does your species do this? She had ruled an empire where control was absolute, and yet she felt that her control had been tested, not by force, but by intelligence, courage, and insight. A single human had shifted the perception of centuries, and she realized that the galaxy could never underestimate humanity again. As night fell over the palace, the stars of the Dominion glimmered with silent light. The Empress returned to her observation chamber, seated quietly, contemplating the day's revelations. Alex had not only survived the tests, but he had also revealed vulnerabilities, shifted perceptions, and challenged centuries of assumptions without aggression or deception. The ripple he had created when he first entered the palace had grown into a wave, touching the court, the empire, and the mind of the Empress herself. Humanity, fragile in body yet unyielding in spirit, had begun to prove its place among the stars. The galaxy, she realized, would witness the rise of a species that could adapt, survive, and thrive in ways no one had imagined. And the Empress, pale but aware, understood that the coming days would not only reveal the limits of a human mind, but also the potential for an entire species to change the course of her empire, and perhaps the galaxy itself. The morning sun rose over the Zyranth capital, casting its twin light beams across the crystalline towers. The city gleamed as though it had been polished by centuries of discipline, but inside the palace, tension hung heavier than ever. The Empress, seated in her observation chamber, had spent countless hours pondering the human, Alex Wren, and the subtle yet profound effect he had on her court and her mind. She could feel a shift, not in the laws of her empire, nor in the loyalty of her advisors, but in the understanding of power itself. Alex had survived psychic challenges, navigated the intricate politics of the court, and observed every secret and subtlety without fear or disrespect. Now the final stage awaited, a formal council meeting designed to determine whether the humans would be accepted as allies, tolerated as guests, or dismissed entirely. The stakes were high. This was not a test of strength or diplomacy alone. It was a test of trust, perception, and insight. The Empress summoned the council, and nobles from across the empire gathered. Their eyes, many of them wary or skeptical, tracked Alex's every move. The air was tense with unspoken questions. Could a human truly understand the Dominion well enough to merit recognition? Could a species so young, so small, and so physically fragile stand as a peer among rulers of the galaxy? Alex entered the chamber with calm assurance. He did not bow as expected, but his posture was respectful. He carried no weapons, no devices of influence, yet there was an aura of confidence about him that demanded attention. As he walked to the center of the hall, he observed the council with a quiet intelligence, noting alliances, rivalries, and subtle gestures that revealed hidden intentions. The Empress rose from her throne, her violet eyes fixed on him. Her expression was calm, yet the pallor of her face betrayed the tension she felt. "Human," she said, her voice carrying authority tempered with curiosity. "You have endured challenges, observed our empire, and demonstrated insight and clarity beyond what I expected. You have altered the perception of your species in a single presence. Today, the Council will witness the full measure of your abilities. Speak, and show us why humanity deserves recognition in the Dominion." He described Earth, its challenges, its achievements, and the lessons humanity had learned from surviving hardship. He emphasized creativity, collaboration, and resilience, demonstrating how humans could contribute to the broader galaxy not through conquest, but through insight and problem-solving. The Council listened, many of them skeptical at first, but gradually the whispers softened into murmurs of acknowledgement. Alex had not boasted. He had not challenged authority. Instead, he had demonstrated that humans, though physically weaker than many alien species, possessed mental adaptability and ingenuity that could rival even the most sophisticated systems in the Dominion. One noble, skeptical, and sharp-tongued attempted to challenge him. "You claim your species can contribute to the galaxy, yet you are fragile, inexperienced and untested in true conflict. How can we trust that humanity will endure the pressures of galactic politics and warfare? It is measured by the ability to adapt, to learn, and to overcome challenges. My species has survived disasters, wars, and catastrophes that would have destroyed stronger beings. We endure because we observe, plan, and act with understanding. Fragility does not mean weakness. It means we are creative in finding solutions. Some nodded subtly, others whispered, and the air seemed lighter, as if a tension long held in place by hierarchy and expectation was slowly unraveling. The Empress observed carefully, noting how Alex's calm reasoning and clear logic were gradually shifting even the most skeptical minds. After several hours, the council concluded their discussion. The Empress rose, her pale face reflecting both authority and a profound respect. "You have demonstrated clarity, insight, and adaptability," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Your presence has revealed both the potential of your species and the flaws in assumptions we have held for centuries. I recognize humanity not as a threat, but as a partner with untapped potential. From this day forward, humans shall be regarded with respect, and their contributions welcomed." Alex bowed respectfully to the Empress, his calm demeanor unchanged. "I am honored, Empress. My goal has never been dominance, only understanding. I hope humanity can live up to the trust you place in us." Yet no one had influenced her as this human had, not through force, intimidation, or cunning, but through clarity of thought, courage of spirit, and adaptability. She realized that the galaxy underestimated humanity at its peril. Later, Alex was escorted through the palace for a tour of the Dominion's command center. The Empress had arranged for him to see the Empire's technology, fleet strategies, and resource management systems. What she expected to be a display of superiority instead became a quiet lesson in observation. Alex noted inefficiencies, patterns of energy flow, and logistical bottlenecks, not to expose flaws, but to understand how a civilization this advanced operated. The Empress observed silently, amazed at how quickly he grasped the systems. He asked questions, made connections, and proposed ideas, not to challenge her authority, but to demonstrate insight and understanding. Each suggestion was simple yet profound, reflecting a human ability to see relationships and solutions where others only saw rules and hierarchy. During a private conversation later, the Empress spoke candidly. "Alex, you have shown that strength is not only measured in power or psychic ability. Humanity's strength lies in adaptability, creativity, and resilience. You have forced me to reconsider everything I thought I knew about the galaxy and the species within it. To learn, to adapt, and to survive. I hope that by understanding each other, we can create a galaxy where cooperation and insight matter as much as strength. Perhaps the galaxy itself is ready to recognize that even the smallest, most fragile species can shape the course of empires with intelligence, courage, and vision." He contributed insights that improved resource distribution, proposed strategies that strengthened alliances, and offered perspectives that resolved conflicts before they escalated. His presence gradually transformed the perception of humanity across the Dominion. Where once humans had been dismissed as weak, they were now seen as clever, adaptable, and capable of making meaningful contributions to galactic affairs. The Empress observed all of this quietly, reflecting on the ripple effect Alex had caused. The pale color of her face no longer reflected fear, but a new understanding and respect. The empire she had ruled for centuries was vast and strong, but she recognized that strength alone did not ensure survival. Insight, adaptability, and courage, the qualities Alex embodied, were equally vital. One evening, Alex and the Empress stood in the observation chamber, gazing out at the stars. The twin suns had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a canvas of glittering light. "You have changed the Dominion," the Empress said softly, her voice carrying both authority and admiration. "Not through force nor through challenge, but through your mind, your perception, and your spirit. You have taught me to reconsider what it means to be strong. Survival often depends on adaptability, creativity, and courage. Sometimes the smallest actions can have the largest impact. The galaxy will not underestimate your species again." The court, once skeptical and wary, now respected humanity's ingenuity and resilience. By the end of his stay, Alex had left an indelible mark, not by defeating armies or wielding psychic power, but by demonstrating the true essence of human strength. The Empress, transformed by this realization, acknowledged a new truth. The galaxy's most underestimated species could be the most powerful, not through domination, but through insight, courage, and adaptability. The final scene unfolded in the palace gardens. The twin suns, light shimmered across the crystal structures, casting long, gentle shadows. The Empress and Alex stood side by side, looking out at the city below. For centuries, she had ruled with certainty, confident in her knowledge and power. Yet in the presence of humanity, she had learned that power was not only in domination, but in understanding, creativity, and courage. Alex turned slightly, his expression calm and steady. The galaxy is vast, Empress. There is much to learn and much to achieve, but perhaps together we can shape it wisely. And in that transformation, the galaxy began to change as well. Because one species, underestimated and small, had proven that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could rival the mightiest powers in existence.